So I'd like to warmly welcome Dr. Cherie Dirk. She is a postdoc research fellow at the African Climate Institute at if you don't mind, just to mute. Thank you very much. And then secondly, we have Ms. Safiyya Sedick. She is a marine consultant at Anchor Environmental Consultants, so welcome to you. And then we have Amanubo Amos, who is a youth outreach liaison coordinator at the Food and Agricultural Organization at the United Nations. So warm welcome to you. Thank you. And then last but certainly not least, we have Koena Marabe, and he is a program manager involved with water, energy and climate change at the European Commission. So really excited that you are able to spend this hour with us today. And I think I'll jump right in and ask our first question. So please, do you mind telling us a little bit about your career journey, just including, your degree, maybe your first job and subsequent jobs? So let's start with you, Amos, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much, Megan. Good afternoon to everyone that has joined us today. As introduced earlier on, Amos Amanubo, my full names, and a quick account of my career pathway. I had my bachelor's degree in conservation forestry and production technology at Makerere University. That's in Uganda. So I studied my bachelor's from 2014 to 2019, I must say. That's when I graduated, but completed in 2018. And then from my bachelor's, I had some years off, and then last year is when I actually joined UCT to start my master's. As far as my the jobs that I've taken are concerned, the first job that I had, I remember was, immediately after finishing campus, you kind of, especially for foresters, because the jobs are quite few, you scramble here and there. So the job that I had, I was a tree inventory or enumerator. That was quite a short-term consultancy, I must say. But then immediately after that, I was blessed to get a job at the Ugandan Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development as a junior environmental and social impact assessment officer. I did that job for a few months. I decided to quit my job and move on to become a freelance forester or a forestry consultant, to just scratch for what is there and breathe what is not there. Then after that, the space of being a freelancer is when I actually started. After that, I started my master's now, and at starting my master's, I also then started a job with Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and also as research associate at the African Center for Green Economy. So that is a very brief account of my career pathway so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Amos. So over to you, Safiyya, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you so much for having me. So I started my career with a Bachelor of Science degree at UCT in 2009, quite a long time ago. And then I went on to do an honors degree in conservation and biodiversity at UWC. And I realized that I really wanted to continue working in deep sea research. So I went and did some taxonomy, a master's degree at Stellenbosch University. After that, I got an internship with the South African Environmental Observation Network, and I worked on deep sea offshore guides. And I did a lot of species descriptions and that sort of thing. And then I went on to work with the International Seabed Authority, where we did offshore work in the Pacific for a bit. And that was also largely based on seabed exploration. And then I came on to work with Anchor as a marine consultant, where I do a lot of the same work. So offshore, working with seabed animals and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So over to you, Cherie.
Thank you, Megan, and it's so lovely to already hear from Amos and Safiyya about their journey. So I beat you, Safiyya. I started my BSc back in 2006, and I specialized in marine biology and ecology. And then for my honors in 2009, I shifted a little bit and I focused more on botany. And after my honors degree, I really just wanted a break before continuing to study further. So I worked for a conservation company called Conservation South Africa. They were based at Kirstenbosch Gardens, and that was my first job in conservation. But to be honest, my first job ever was waitressing because some of you may notice that it is difficult to find work in your field of study. And I don't think it has anything to do with us as individuals, but because the field is quite nuanced. But that then opened up an opportunity for me, and I realized that I enjoyed conservation and I wanted to go back and do my master's. So I returned to UCT in 2014. I graduated with my master's, but in paleoecology. And this is something I've never done before. So when I was an undergrad, I never imagined that I'll be sitting in front of a microscope for hours on end, studying microfossils in order to inform conservation. But this was an opportunity for me to do things a little bit differently in the sector. And after my master's, I decided to work for a sustainable development company for 2 years. So completely switched gear again. And this was focused more on sustainable development and working with communities and helping them adapt to climate change. And I still had a passion to study further. And that is why I returned to do my PhD in 2016. Unfortunately, I cannot call myself a doctor just yet because I haven't graduated. So graduation is set for July, and it will be a doctorate in applied paleoecology. And I incorporated stakeholder engagement, working with farmers and conservation managers. And I also put together an interactive modeling interface where basically the data can be used by stakeholders. So that is a little bit of my background. And now I'm a postdoc at the African Climate and Development Initiative. So they are also based at UCT, and I'm mostly working with stakeholders. Not a lot of lab work or field work this time around, but a lot of social skills are needed. So project management and working with stakeholders in the landscape to better manage and conserve their land. Yeah.
Thank you, Cherie. Over to you, Koena.
Thank you very much, Megan. Happy to see you all. My name is Koena Marabe, here in Lesotho. I started my BA degree at the National University of Lesotho, where I studied urban and regional planning. Then after graduating in 2012, I joined the local city council here. It's called Maseru City Council, where I was on an internship for 3 years because I couldn't secure any permanent employment. So I was working in the building control department, where I was regulating the buildings within the Maseru City Council jurisdiction. In 2015, I think it was around June, I secured a permanent employment at the European Union Commission in Lesotho, where I was appointed to be the program manager for water, energy, and climate change. Sorry. Under the water sector, we were focusing on conservation of wetlands and also trying to reverse land degradation, which is rife in Lesotho. Lesotho is described as the water tower of Southern Africa. because South Africa gets water from Lesotho. It goes just straight by gravity without a need to be pumped. We are up here, you are down there. So we are just supplying water. So we realize that our land is degrading and the quality of water and quantity it's being affected. So we planned a big program to reverse land degradation. Again, I am working in the energy sector, whereby we are trying to help the country to make use of abundant renewable energy resources. We are importing energy or electricity from South Africa, which is generated from coal, but Lesotho has abundance of wind energy, solar energy. We have a lot of water. We can use maybe hydroelectricity. So in 2017, I applied to Stellenbosch, where I started studying postgraduate diploma in environmental management, and I immediately registered for an MPhil, Master of Philosophy in Environmental Management, which is done now. I'm still searching for a supervisor for a PhD at Wits University. I'm intending to, my focus is on the accelerating energy transition in the Southern Africa. Apart from working for European Union Commission, now I'm working for Habitat for Humanity Lesotho, which is an international organization which is seeking to eradicate housing poverty for vulnerable groups. I'm also working for Vodacom Lesotho Foundation, which is trying or seeking to accelerate achievement of sustainable development goals. And lastly, I have just established an environmental management consultancy firm. I think it has only a month. So yeah, I'm just starting. I think that's my career in essence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I love to hear that you brought in entrepreneurship as well, even if it is just for a month. So what I'm hearing from all of you is that you obviously started on a career journey, and where you're at currently didn't just happen overnight. And so really lovely and interesting to hear from all of you regarding that. So Koena, you explained really beautifully your role that you're currently playing. So I'm going to ask our other panelists for just tell us a little bit about the organization that you're currently at and the role that that you fulfill on a daily basis, if you don't mind. So maybe let's start with Safiyya this time.
Thank you, Megan. Yes.
Oh, you've just frozen, Safiyya. So I think maybe while we're waiting for her to unfreeze, perhaps Amos, would you like to go? And then when she comes back, she can go after you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I currently work, as earlier mentioned, with the FAO. This is the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations. It's a specialized agency of the United Nations that is sort of leading efforts to combat hunger worldwide, and also meeting nutritional and food security needs. So FAO basically supports governments and partners in sort of formulating the right policies and programs to address these goals of achieving food security and reaching zero hunger, I would say, and achieving better nutrition in the societies, communities around the world. But when you just talk about food security and so on, it sounds like it is particularly just about food, but it is not about food. If you begin to think about the things that affect the factors that play before that food actually reaches on your table, it includes a lot of things: the climate, the water systems, the forests, the soils. So within FAO, there are very many units that work within FAO itself. There is the OCB. This is the Office of Climate and Biodiversity. There is also the Forestry Department. So there are all these units that work on all these different domains through which food finally comes to our table. But if we don't work on them, then in a way we are affected. But particularly also within FAO, I work in the Forestry Division under the World Forestry Congress Secretariat. So we are currently organizing the 15th World Forestry Congress, which happens every year, which happens once in 6 years. So the last one we had it here in Durban, and in the next 2 weeks, we will have the World Forestry Congress running in Seoul, in South Korea. And my role within the World Forestry Congress Secretariat is to support knowledge management and outreach, particularly youth outreach, youth and young professionals outreach and liaison, sort of trying to bring the young people, the young professionals, the youth out there into all these dialogues that are happening around the environment, around forests, around climate, around nature-based solutions. How can we source the voices of all these people and how can we bring them in the picture? So that's a lot of what my job is currently focused on, and we are currently developing a global declaration for young people, youth and young people, young professionals in the forest sector, so that they can clearly spell out what their needs are and what their recommendations are to address their needs, to be able to meaningfully contribute to the challenges that the world is facing. That's a snapshot about what I do in FAO. I also work here in Cape Town as a research associate at the African Center for Green Economy. A very significant component of my research. In the broader sense, I'm focused on the circular economy, green circular economy for Africa, how we can reimagine that. But I am heavily focused right now on energy access and renewable energies for that particular, for that matter. So a lot of the work, I would just say it directly, is conducting research, if I may say. That's a snapshot about my the organizations that I am currently affiliated to.
Sure, that all sounds really interesting, Amos. Thank you for that. We'll go to you, Cherie, while we wait for Safiyya to jump back in. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. So I currently work as a postdoc research fellow at the ACDI, which is the African Climate and Development Initiative. So they are a self-funded initiative at UCT in the EGS department, and they focused on transdisciplinary research, mostly, so basically research that is applied and, taking from knowledge into practice. And their focus is on social upliftment and development. I'm involved in 3 projects at the moment. So this is quite different to, what I came out of my PhD, which was just focused on my research topic. Whereas now I'm working with interdisciplinary teams, basically. So I think in total I have about 6 different colleagues spaced out in these projects. A lot of it is project management and coordination as opposed to research, but I think that is quite an important skill to have in these projects, because the research is obviously the core business, but a lot of it is managing how we do the research and consulting stakeholders. Because it is transdisciplinary, it means that the social side is really strong, and it's a lot of collaboration with land use owners and managers. So the 3 projects, I can maybe just briefly mention them. The first one is called TES NBS, so it's towards ensuring equitable and sustainable nature-based solutions. The focus of that project is Southern African water towers, and there have been a lot of initiatives or nature-based type solutions, which include restoration, conservation, sustainable management, and that sort of thing. But is it being done sustainably and equitably with the most vulnerable people being uplifted and actually benefiting. So that's the focus on the research. The component that I'm working on is called a systematic review. So we, myself and 3 other researchers are each taking on the tasks of reviewing and coding 50 papers. And from that, we will distill the understanding of what's been done in Southern Africa in terms of nature-based solutions. Then the other project is called BBCOP, so it stands for the Berg Breede Community of Practice. So focusing on the Berg and the Breede River catchments and understanding that we need to have a very integrated way of managing catchments and working as a community of practice. So a lot of that is stakeholder engagement. We actually have our first ever workshop where we are bringing researchers and implementers or practitioners together in May. And that will give them an opportunity to actually learn about what work is being done and what research is being done so that it is a bit more focused and integrated. So that's happening in May, looking forward to that. And then the third project I'm involved in is a part of a consortium with other universities. So University of Nairobi and University of Uganda. And we are putting together a short course on stakeholder engagement and how to better manage relationships and using those skills when working with land use managers within Southern Africa and the rest of Africa, obviously. So it is a little bit of, bits and pieces of different things. As I mentioned, I'm not in the lab. Like what I used to do before was a lot of time in the lab, and that was when I was at the pond conservation unit, also at UCT. So yeah, it's a bit of a change, but I'm enjoying the project management side of it. And then I don't know if I have time just for one more thing. So I'm actually also a volunteer outside of UCT. I work as a chair for the student organized colloquium. And basically that's an event that happens once a year for anyone that's interested in systems thinking and system dynamics modeling. And it's a part of the International System Dynamics Society, but it is something that I think, part of myself being able to volunteer in that role is important for career development for myself and for helping other students that might be new to the field of system dynamics and need to connect with various opportunities on how to upskill.
So really interesting. Thank you, Cherie. So I think what I'm hearing from all of our panelists is that when you're thinking about conservation, it's quite diverse, and so it pulls in your communities, it pulls in the research, it pulls in policy development, implementation or knowledge, and then implementing that knowledge. So really a broad field, and I'm sure that people who are interested could find their niches in different areas. And I love that. I think it was Amos mentioned the different departments that are pulled in with food security. So it's all kind of multi and transdisciplinary working, which is really, really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So on to my third question. When you're thinking about the skills that you utilize on a day-to-day basis, what are those skills? What do they look like? So maybe Amos, if you'd like to lead with that question.
Yeah, thank you very much once again. I think a lot of the skills that I utilize on everyday basis at my workspace are actually soft skills. Many of them are not hard skills. One of the very much core skills that I utilize every day, interpersonal relations are very, very important. That's a very core skill that I've learned. Then the second skill that I've learned is that I need every day at work is good communication skills, be it oral or be written. I think written is very important because I write a lot of articles, you write a lot of emails, you write a lot of policy briefs and so on. So that is very, very, very important. And then the third skill is, of course, what would I call it? The awareness of cultural diversity, right? It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be the hardcore culture, like you are Zulu, I am a Lugara from Uganda, and you are this. It's that kind of culture, but the people's culture, like my own culture, my own, how do I define how I relate with other people? What is acceptable, what is not for other people, what is right or what is wrong, and how do I approach them? So this way, every day I approach everyone, it keeps that good working relationship in the work environment. And I realize that you might say a word at the workplace that you think is, according to your culture, is very, very polite. But for someone, it's super rude. So it's just being aware about that cultural differences and diversity, because you're also working in a very transdisciplinary field, right? I could easily trust something when someone is saying that energy access is very important for food security, but because I am only a nutritionist, I think energy access is not important and I trash it off. But actually, to them, it is very important. So we're working in a very transdisciplinary field, and it is very important that we are aware of what cultures govern our workspace. So these are the skills, these are the soft skills that I use every day at at the workspace. There are other, of course, technical skills, more of um, like policy review and analysis, writing policy briefs, conducting research. All those skills are very valuable, but those skills are only complemented, they are only reinforced by these soft skills that I have, because I can have the best idea about a particular policy statement, why it's nice or not, but if I cannot express it well in terms of communication, then it doesn't land on a good ground. So these are the skills that I think I need most every day. But there are many other small skills, of course, being able to utilize, for instance, Microsoft Office or whatever, those technical skills. But I think the skills that I value most are the skills that enable me to relate with my fellow work people or even students. Yeah.
Thank you, Amos. I see Cherie is sending hearts and hand claps to you. So maybe I'll ask you to go after Amos, if you don't mind, Cherie.
Yes, I think it's mostly because Amos has just taken the words out of my mouth. But it is exactly that. Like we learn technical skills which are critically important for our research. But it is those soft skills that buffer and that bring it all together. So during my postdoc, I've actually been involved in a short science communications course, because I realized that I know how to write a thesis. I kind of know a little bit about a policy brief just from my exposure, but I've never actually written my own policy brief before. And finding different ways of communicating, like even through this platform, like being able to sit on a panel and share my research and my passions and how I got into it. This is also a part of science communication. So I think at this point in my career, me knowing what the scientific name of this particular rare plant species is not as important, because I have the skills of being able to find that out. So all the exams and the tutorials that we do during undergrad and that sort of thing, they are great, but you're not meant to keep them in your head. So you get to a point where you are a critical thinker on a day-to-day basis, because you are working in transdisciplinary teams, and there are usually issues that come up, how to, I don't know, how to get this particular farmer who is like, has so much land in this area and has some very unique plant species, but how do you get him to that workshop? That's going to require something more. It's going to require maybe a phone call, or being able to go and meet them and have some, some coffee and cookies. So it requires this extra relational engagement that maybe I didn't learn during my university degree. But if you bring it all together, you have to have those. And I think like being able to put ourselves out in the situations that are very uncomfortable, like Amos mentioned, the personal cultural differences, because I personally do not speak Afrikaans. Like, I grew up in Johannesburg. Afrikaans was not a big part of my upbringing, but a lot of the stakeholders that I deal with are Afrikaans speaking. So we find a middle ground where they speak Afrikaans and I speak English. We're both kind of understanding each other, but it's also accepting people where they are. So everything to what Amos said about, you know, having those technical and those soft skills to complement each other.
Thank you. Koena, can you add anything to what Amos and Cherie has added or said?
Well, I want to believe that they said it all, but what I can add from my side, I am working in the development cooperation sector where diplomacy is key. Leadership skills is key. I think, is it Amos? Amos talked about how do I put it? Multiculturalism. We need to tolerate each other in the development cooperation, understand each other's. We need to have mutual respect among the people we work with. So also report writing skills is key, and also being putting technical terms in simple language, because you see, when we are trying to help people, we always talk about or use big words when we talk to them, and then we fail to transmit the message. Like when we talk about climate change, we need to be simplistic, so that even the illiterate people, if that is the right word to use, they could understand it. Yes, I think soft skills are always very important.
Thank you, Koena. I just want to check, is Safiyya, are you back in the room? I'm not sure if you've come back. Hi.
Yes, sorry about that. Our generator just shut off, like completely. Everything went dark for a second. Yeah.
Sorry. So do you maybe let's backtrack a little bit, and maybe fill us in about your role at Anchor. What's it called? Sorry.
Anchor Environmental, yeah. So I managed to catch like half of what you guys were talking about, and I think my role as a consultant plays into that as well. Even though I have this foundational technical degree, so I have a very specialized degree, I also find myself having to learn all of these soft skills where I'm dealing with stakeholders, and I'm having to communicate all of this technical information to people who are just trying to understand what's happening. So a lot of what I do involves sort of environmental authorizations, where people want to mine, we need to notify public that this is happening, and obviously all the technical aspects also need to be communicated, which is also not really, it's not very easy, like talking to people about all of these complicated things that you have took you a degree to understand. So that's also one part of my role, and I also play a very specialized role where I describe species from the sea floor, and we have a look at conserving the organisms and the communities that live there, and also trying to take that and communicate it to people and saying this is why we should, and this is the practices we put in place to make sure that happens. But yeah, Anchor is very multidisciplinary as well. So even though I am a marine consultant, I move off into different other sectors as well. So agriculture, land-based mining, forestry, that sort of thing. So having a science degree means that it gives you a good basis to take on other things in other disciplines as well, because it gives you that a very strong background to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I see that there are some questions coming through, and so maybe let's just focus on those for a moment. So I see Ronald asked a question, and that's for you, Cherie. Where and when will the stakeholder engagement short course be available that you mentioned, please?
Ooh, putting me on the spot. Okay, so it is still under development, and we hope that it will be online in September this year. It will be a short course, so probably like a 5-day thing, and then a little bit of a hybrid mode where you'll be able to do some coursework offline and then have some online engagements. We want to make it accessible to everyone. So I don't think that there'll be a fee necessarily associated with that. Obviously, if you are a student, then you know that's first prize. So I think it is our target audience is mostly postgraduate students that are interested in upskilling themselves on how to engage with stakeholders. Did I answer everything? Where and when? Yeah, so it will be online, so it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to join in, and it will be a hybrid, so you can participate both in person on Zoom, and then probably like coursework in the background.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then I will, sorry, I can also pop the link into the website where there will be updated information on the course.
That will be great. Thank you, Cherie. And then Joshua's asked, to what extent would one's degree, so either your bachelor, your master, your honours, your doctorate, have to be orientated towards conservation for one to be able to work in conservation? So any takers for this question?
Okay.
Koena here. Well, for me, if you can look at my first degree, it was in town planning. However, in town planning, I did project implementation and planning. So it opened an opportunity for me to venture into what we can call the conservation sector. I think most of the courses have the project management component, and it's easier to go into the conservation if you have project management. Over.
Thank you, Koena. And then Safiyya, you want to add something as well?
Yeah, sure. I think that a Bachelor of Science provides a very good foundation for most things, because we've had people come through here with a degree in sort of more terrestrial focus, but I've ended up doing marine consulting. So I think I don't think you should limit yourself, but obviously you have something that you're interested in. So I also started doing my BSc in geology, and now it's all just marine focused. So I don't think that it necessarily determines exactly what it is you want to do.
Thank you. Amos and Cherie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that very briefly. I think your interest matters a lot, right? Regardless of what you are doing. I think a lot of the problems that we have right now is because of the mindset that a lot of it I attribute to the mindset that if you did something else, then you shouldn't be working in this field. But actually, I do think that much as the particular course you do for your master's or bachelor's matters, you can always find a space for whatever course you have done in the conservation field. Because I mean, now we do a lot of, like, this has been the problem, right? People do a lot of hardcore science, but they don't know how to communicate that to the very common person down there in the grassroots. So this is where we need communicators. Even if you're doing communications and journalism, how can you begin to narrate, sell those stories, bring the stories on board? So it's for me, it's not about what you do right now, but it's about whether you are actually truly interested in conservation. You will always find a space for the course that you're doing in conservation. For instance, where I work, there is also the conservation, there is the biodiversity and climate change department. But we do recruit a lot of people who are just social media strategists. And we need them because the scientists don't have this kind of, kind of technical knowledge about making the information user-friendly. So these are the skills that are needed. All skills are needed on the deck, just to say that.
Thank you. And I think what you've just said now, Amos, kind of complements the question around, what are the skills that you utilize on a day-to-day basis? And all of you mentioned, yeah, you have your knowledge, but you also use those softer skills. And we often speak about, we call it transferable skills, because the context changes, that environment that you work in changes, but the actual skill, like your communication skills, your writing skills, your interpersonal skills that you all have mentioned, kind of stays the same, gets stronger, but you move it into a different environment. And I think that's a really important take-home message. So thank you for that. So there are some more questions coming through, which is absolutely great. So Nandipa asks, and this is for you, Cherie, what jobs or career paths can follow with an EGS major?
I would say the sky's the limit. So I think, my colleagues on the panel have already mentioned this. It doesn't actually really matter as long as it follows your passion, and if you'd want to be in conservation, you will make a way for a link to be made. So for example, paleoecology, I think it is something that would usually go be in the EGS department. So because it is looking at like deep time, and people usually analyze fossils for like thousands and millions of years old. But then what I did with my master's and my PhD is that I was more interested in like the recent time, and I studied like the last few hundreds of years and how that relates to environmental change, and then link that to land use management. So that's why I say the sky is the limit, because I think as long as you have the technical skills, and if you have a passion for a certain topic, you will make it work. And that's part of research and doing postgraduate studies is you're able to be a bit more innovative, and that's what we need in science. So also just like in general, I always thought that I should have been in the EGS department and not in biological sciences, and I thought it would be a hindrance. But in the end, even though I have a biological sciences background, I was still able to get a job in the EGS department. So it's case in point, like it doesn't really matter what you've studied, if it's so specific, as long as you then tailor it into something that makes sense for you. So I started studying marine biology, and after a few years, I was like, this just isn't for me, and that's why I moved towards plants. And I think I was a little bit scared of, the way we used to sample and dissect things, and I was like, I can't deal with all the gruesome, and plants were just a lot easier. But at the end of the day, my experiments would always fail and the plants would die. So that didn't work for me. And being able to pivot and figure out what is your passion. So, then I moved to paleoecology, where I could, spend some time in the lab, follow very, obviously procedures that are quite meticulous, and then sit in front of a microscope, which obviously there are those technical skills around it, but it's still within the realm of biodiversity and conservation. And that's the most important thing.
Thank you for that, Cherie. I love that you brought passion. Passion definitely plays a role with most things that we do. So Farisai, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but there's a mention of imposter syndrome. So it goes on to say, how does switching a field of study affect you in your current position? And at what point can you say that you actually have settled in your current field of study? And so actually, just believing that you deserve to be where you're at. Are there any takers on the panel that would like to answer this question? I see Amos, you're smiling there.
I mean, yeah. The imposter syndrome is a very I guess if you are struggling with the imposter syndrome, it's a sign that you are probably doing good and probably doing bad. You just need to be able to. It's a very thin line. the thing about the imposter syndrome, as someone who struggled with it a lot back then, is that you always hunger to achieve more, like, what can I do to keep getting better? But then the backside of it is that you don't appreciate yourself. And even at workplace, right? I used to struggle with this, and someone would come and say, "Oh, you did a very great job," and I'll be like, "Nah, that's not a genuine appreciation of what I've done. I've really done a great job." So one is to believe that you actually deserve success. I think that's very important. But I think to overcoming the imposter syndrome, because people would always say, "You're doing great and you're doing this," and I would not believe them at all. But to overcome the imposter syndrome and to feel to feel comfortable and confident about my competence and so on. Someone once told me this. I will share it with you because I have it down on a note. It's just a simple question. So it's a question to you always. You should ask when you feel like you're going through this. Maybe it will work for you, maybe not. Do you know the answers? If you always ask this question, it's likely that many times the answer will be no, and then you feel bad, you feel terrible. But the right question to ask is not, do I know the answers? I think the right question you should ask yourself is, do I know what it takes to get the answers? Because many times you don't know the answers, but you can know what it takes to get those answers, And I've always asked these questions. And anytime at my workplace, I get roles assigned to me, which, I mean, sometimes I'm assigned a role, I don't know completely what the answer is, but I take it on because I know what I would probably need to find those answers. And I find them and I get satisfied about the achievement. So if you are struggling with that imposter syndrome, to be very honest, I think you are actually doing good. The syndrome itself is not good, but it comes from, I think, a good thing that you want to be better, you want to feel better, you want to be stronger. And I think it's something that you should not overlook. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amos. If you don't mind, from the panel, if I move on to the questions that are here, because I'm just wary of time and I see we've got about 10 minutes left and there are several questions. So Joshua has another one. He asks, to what extent or to which extent do you find yourself as a scientist working for a company because that's where you get paid for your work? And to what extent do you then get to choose to work in the place that speaks most to you? I hope the question makes sense, he asks. Anyone who would like to answer Joshua's question?
I can start. Safiyya, if you want to go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I said that this is a very good question, and I feel like I still haven't figured it out, because I would say that I haven't been paid the best in my conservation career, and I'm not sure if it's because I'm not at the right organizations or whatever, or maybe I just haven't, got that sweet spot yet. And I think it is interesting because when speaking to like friends and family members, maybe in different sectors like accounting or business analytics or whatever it is, some of them are like, I hate my job and I just do it because like I get nice money, and I think that could happen sometimes. And then that's when it comes down to the passion and why you're doing it. So start with why you want to do something, because I think that you could be in a position where you do get paid good money, but it isn't fulfilling. You don't believe in the work that you're doing, and it's just going to make you resent, waking up every day and doing whatever's required of you. So for me, like now I'm like, okay, I have my degree, I nearly have my doctorate. It's in paleoecology. It's very specialized, but I don't think I'm going to do paleoecology. I think it's going to be something very much in like the stakeholder engagement, and more applied research and policy development and that sort of thing. And I feel like I still need to create that space for myself. So you will identify people that you work with that have that sort of mindset, where it's not just about getting a paycheck or working for a particular company, but it's about how we are changing the conservation sector in a way that is inspiring and benefits people and looks after the environment. And when you identify those people, have conversations with them, ask them to be a mentor. You could even mentor someone else that is, asking the similar questions and have these discussions like peer mentoring. Because, yeah, like I said, I don't know the answer to it yet. So I'd love to hear what Amos, Safiyya, and the other panelists have to say. Koena.
Yeah, so I think all these sorts of decisions come from experience. I think if you're coming from a degree, yes, you can take everyone's opinions into account, but you won't know until you've started. So once you've landed that first job, you get a feel for, do I really want to go in this direction? This is what I really want to do. Should I just be working for the money? Am I really passionate about conservation? So I think that you got to start somewhere, and I think identify something that you think you would be happy with, like an area where you think that you could fit in, and then take it from there. Because when you start that first job, you learn and you grow and you learn how to deal with people, you learn how to deal with things, and then you have a better sense of what it is you want to do, that next step. So yeah, I think a lot of people are still learning that, and as you say, you need to find that sweet spot. So it's that trade-off between like job satisfaction and income. And a lot of the time, if you're really passionate and you're really satisfied with your job, I feel like you would gravitate towards that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Maybe to hello, Miguel.
Yeah, please go ahead, Koena. I'm just watching the time, but please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Maybe to add on what other speakers has already said, I think we, as a student, you need to assess which are the current problems, or the global problems, and you think along those lines. We have climate change, we have we want to respond to climate change, and we need renewable energy, we need to conserve vegetation cover, we need to I think it's very important to think of the problems and come up with solutions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm very much aware of time. We've got 5 minutes left, and I'd really like to ask the last question, and this is from JP. How important is environmental law in the creation of a more sustainable future? And is there a lot of collaboration with environmental lawyers in your respective fields of conservation? It's a really good question from JP. Does anyone want to have a bash?
Maybe other speakers will add to what I will say. For me, environmental law is very important. While studying environmental management, I took a course in environmental law. You need to understand the country policies and the laws. So it's going to help you to be able to interpret the legal documents. To maybe, if you are a consulting firm, you need to understand the legal basis of certain documents. So it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to kind of wrap up the session, if you don't mind. And so we're going to have to keep it really brief from each of the panelists. But maybe just two things. When looking back as a student, what would you have liked to have known? So maybe just one thing, and then what is your advice to students entering conservation? So I don't know who would like to go first, and to keep it as brief as possible, please. Amos, would you like to lead?
I'm trying to package it and make it finer. If someone could take the lead, that would be great.
No problem.
I only have 2 words: be open-minded and be proactive if you want to be in the conservation sector. Thank you.
I like that, open-minded and proactive. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Koena. Who would like to go next?
I can say that I think volunteer work was really helpful. During my master's time, I did some volunteer work as well. And I think that this is great to go onto your CV, because being able to have that degree is good, but many people have degrees. So having the work experience is very important in the South African job market. So that's the one thing. And then also, the journey is so different to the destination. So you might have a goal of, getting a degree in whatever sort of science sector or related discipline, but getting that is going to look very different. And I think being flexible and also trusting your own resilience through that journey is important.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cherie. Who would like to go next between Safiyya and Amos?
I'm happy to go. If I look back as a student, sometimes I have no regret on the decisions that I made at all. I think it was a very satisfying journey when I was an undergrad. But I think if I look back, I would have been open. I would say be open to challenge yourself, to learn new things. You just don't know when you might need these skills, right? I want to learn new things now. They are very relevant to my job, but I get my to-do list grows every second, and it's like, which brain space do I have to learn this new skill to apply in my job? Sometimes I delegate it, but I could have done it. The second thing is, particularly for the students in the conservation field, I could not think of a field that is more promising than any topic about the environment and conservation. It's needed in the financial sector now, the engineering sector. Everyone is thinking about how can we have the environment, how can we sustain it? And I think I would say that you have chosen a very wise path. There are very many and limited opportunities. You just need to be very proactive, as said earlier on, and keep your radar wide.
Thank you for that, Amos. And then last but not least, Safiyya.
So if I could talk to my younger self again, I'd say, just be confident. You make mistakes, things happen, you are more resilient than you think. And just advice for like the conservation field, I would say conservation is a very broad field. It intersects with so many sectors like economics and law and policy. So don't box yourself in. Like, it's a very good idea to have a very broad knowledge, but also through, like Cherie said, volunteering, developing those soft skills as well. So definitely don't box yourself in.
Fantastic. Wow, we are smack bang on 2 o'clock. That's great time management. Time management skills, another skill. So thank you so very much to our panelists. I really enjoyed engaging with you. I'm sure that our students have kind of absorbed everything that you've shared with them today and feel inspired and empowered to continue on that path. So I'm hoping that, that happy students, and thank you so much for your time. If you're wanting to hang back a little bit, you're most welcome to. If not, you're not obliged to. Cherie, Safiyya, Koena, and Amos. Just like to thank you privately, but yeah, I understand if you have to dash away. Thank you all. And then just for those students that are still here, please don't forget our feedback form. If you have any great ideas about future career conversations, pop it in the feedback form as well. Yeah, we can always take it forward from there. Thank you so much, everyone. All the best. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm happy to